I am Humaira Bahadur, and today I'm going to record a video lecture for one of my courses of PhD, and the name of the course is Stereodocencia 2, and the topic that I selected for my presentation is the lipids. So today we will discuss different topics under this subject, and the learning goals of my lecture will be to learn about the proper definition and the properties, its different classifications, and also what are the different roles and functions of lipids. So, starting with the definition, what are lipids? Generally, the term lipid has been defined and is derived from the Greek word lipos, which means the fat. And chemically, if we define it in a proper chemical definition, they are the esters of long chain fatty acids with some kind of alcohols. So if you look at this structure, you can see that here the main components of the lipids are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, along with some minor groups that can be in the form of phosphorus, sulfur, or some nitrogen groups. So, what are the different sources of lipids? If you look at these graphics, you can see that the sources can be divided into two main classes. One are the plant-based sources and the others are the animal-based sources. Among the plant-based sources, the major part of the plant which contain these lipids in the form of oils, they are seeds and the nuts of different plants that can be from sunflower, mustard, canola, soya bean, and many more. And if you look at the animal sources, so we can achieve these lipids from the meat, fish, poultry, and also from the dairy products in the form of milk, in the form of cheese or yogurt. So looking into all these sources, they are quite yummy. So a general property of lipids on the basis of which we can classify them into different categories, further you will discover in this lecture, is the solubility. Lipids are basically hydrophobic, that is, they are not soluble in water, and mostly they are soluble in organic solvents just because of the presence of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in their structure, and due to which if we look at general structure of different lipids, so as the number of carbon increases in their structure, their solubility decreases. So the short chain carbon fatty acids, they are to some extent soluble, but if we go for the long chain fatty acids, they are insoluble in water, and in this water they can form different structures. If you see here, this is a monolayer. Here the hydrophobic head and the tail, they are arranged in a single layer manner, or they can achieve a lipid bilayer structure where they are arranged in the form of a double layer, or they can gain this structure which is called micelle, and the micelle is an aggregation of molecules in a colloidal solution. For example, the one which is formed by different detergents, or they can achieve a structure of the vesicle. So a vesicle is basically a fluid filled sac or air filled sac. So if you compare the structure of micelle with the vesicle, you can see that here the cavity is very small, so little water or liquid is entrapped, while in case of vesicle This cavity is quite big, entrapping a large quantity of the liquid. So now coming to the structure, the classification of the lipids, we have two categories. One is the structure-based classification of the lipids and another is the function-based classification of the lipid. So structure-based classification of the lipids has three further categories. One is the simple lipids, another is compound lipids, and the third one is the derived lipids. Among the simple lipids are the fats and oils and the waxes. So we will describe them one by one and you will see what are the differences and why they have been categorized in different groups. So number first, from the simple lipids is the fats. They can be solid or liquid at room temperature depending upon the nature of the fatty acid. So if the fatty acids are saturate, that is they have all single bonds in their structure, then we get the fats. But if the fatty acids have double bonds, or they can be alternate, they can be conjugate, they can be cis double bonds, they can be trans double bonds, so they are basically giving rise to the unsaturated fatty acids, and the final result is in the form of oils. So they are the simplest form of lipids, and carboxylic acids with hydrogen carbon side chain, which is usually having an even number of carbon, and it can range from 14 carbon to 20 carbons. So fats of animal origin are simple than those of plant origin because they have the oils from the plants, they have different kind of groups attached to their alcohol moiety, and also they have more complication in terms of their single and double bonds. So the general examples of these fats are palmitic acid with 16 carbon in its structure and stearic acid with 18 carbon in its structure, and they can be obtained from these sources. You can see from the butter, from egg yolk, or from the plant oil. Now the second category of the simple lipids are waxes. These are also esters of higher fatty acids with higher monohydroxy aliphatic alcohol, that is mostly in the form of cetyl alcohol. Cetyl alcohol, this is the structure of cetyl alcohol, and they have very long straight chains of the hydrocarbons attached to this alcohol moiety, and the number of the carbon ranges from 60 to 100. So that's why they are complicated, and that's why they are mostly solids. So they can take up water without being getting dissolved in them, and they are mostly used for the preparation of different products like ointments, polishes, cosmetics, etc. And mostly they are present on the surfaces of plants and insects. Like here you can see the plant is shining. Why? Because the plant leaves have a layer of waxes upon its surface, and the main purpose of this wax on the surface of this leaf is to protect it from the dehydration, because it prevents the loss of water, excessive loss of water from the surface of the leaf. And also here in the beehives, waxes are present in an abundant amount. Now coming to the second category of the structure-based classification of lipids, we have compound lipids. It contains groups in addition to an alcohol and a fatty acid. For example, if we take the example of phospholipids, it contains a fatty acid, an alcohol, and a phosphoric acid residue. Here you can see this is a glycerol, to which on the first carbon is attached one fatty acid chain. To the second carbon it is attached a different fatty acid chain, and to the third carbon we have a phosphoric acid which can be attached to further some other kind of group or simply the phosphate group. So apart from this, this is just the first example, we can have many different types. Like some of them can have the nitrogenous bases in their structure as a substituent on the third carbon, or they can be like a sugar moiety attached to it, in which case it will be called a glycolipid, and sulfolipid is another example, aminolipid is another example. We will discuss them one by one. So, the next molecule that we are going to discuss about is the glycerophospholipid. It also belongs to the compound lipids, and these are also called as the phosphoglycerides. Here in this molecule, in this structure, we have glycerol, to which on the first and second carbon are attached the fatty acid chains. These fatty acid chains can be saturated fatty acids or they can be unsaturated fatty acid, depending upon the different nature of this compound. But on the third carbon there is usually the attachment of a highly polar or charged group which is attached through a phosphodiester linkage, phosphodiester bond to this third carbon, and one of them is the phosphate group, and to this phosphate group there can be some other group which can be attached, head group. So glycerol is basically a prochiral molecule, that is, there are no asymmetric carbon. So a prochiral molecule is the one that can be converted from achiral molecule to chiral by just a single step. So in this case you can see it's prochiral, but the attachment of phosphate at one of its carbon, third carbon, it converts it into a chiral compound. So what are a chiral compound? A chiral compound is one whose mirror images are not superimposable and hence they show the optical activity. So the different examples of glycerophospholipids includes the phosphatidic acid, lecithins, cephalins, phosphatidyl inositol, phosphatidyl serine, plasmalogens, and cardiolipins. These have different composition of these fatty acids, and here also the attachment of different groups to the third carbon. The second molecule, the second class of the compound lipid is the phosphatidylcholeins. These are called the lecithins, and they are the precursors of the second messengers. Now, what is a second messenger? A substance whose release within a cell is usually facilitated, promoted by a hormone. For example, one of the common example of the second messenger is the cyclic AMP. So basically the function of the phospholipids are that they are the component of cell membranes and also of different organelles, the membrane of different organelles. So they have both structural and regulatory function, because cell membrane is the part of the cell which facilitates the entry of certain substances and also stops the entry or exit of certain different other substances. So they basically play both the structural part and also as a regulatory part of the cell. Phospholipids in mitochondria are also of biggest importance. They usually play an important role in the electron transport chain, ETC, and cephalin, which is one of the phospholipid, phosphatidylcholeins, is a blood clotting factor. So Here we come with the third phospholipid, compound lipid, which is the sphingophospholipids. They are mostly found in the brain in large quantities and also in the nerve tissues. And they have here, if you look at the structure, you can see that they have fatty acid and a phosphoric group, to which as an X group is attached choline group. So the sphingosine is the alcohol, this is the part, and this part the fatty acid, and the combination of the fatty acids with the sphingosine, this part is basically called the ceramide, and it is found mostly in the glycosphingolipids. The fourth category of the compound lipids is called the glycolipids, and these are widely distributed in every tissue of the body, particularly in the nerve tissues such as brains, and their outer leaflet of the plasma membrane, where they contribute to the cell surface carbohydrate. Here you can see that this is the lipid membrane, lipid residues, to which are attached the sugar residues. So these are basically lipids to which a carbohydrate group or groups are attached, and hence they get the name of the glycolipids. So examples of the glycolipids are glycosphingolipids, ceramides, and one or more sugars are attached to it, and galactosylceramide and gangliosides. Now the fifth category of the compound lipid is called the lipoproteins. These are the combination of the lipids with some kind of protein. So basically these lipoproteins are associated with the transport of the hydrophobic lipids in water, such as in blood plasma or other extracellular fluids in which these fats cannot move. So basically these fats combine with the proteins, and these lipoproteins help them to travel, to transport to the part or to the tissue specifically targeted, and hence they perform the function of the transporters. So there are different kinds of the lipoproteins, basically 5 common types. The chylomicrons, here you can see very low density lipoproteins, low density lipoproteins, high density lipoproteins, and free fatty acid complexes. So if you look at these 4 different kinds of the lipoproteins, you can see that there is a variation in their structure regarding the ratio of the proteins present in them, and also regarding the presence of the cholesterol present in them. Here you can see in case of chylomicron we have less cholesterol. Here the yellow dots, they represent the cholesterol, and also less number of proteins are attached. In case of VLDL we have comparatively more cholesterol and hence more proteins, while in case of LDL and HDL, high density lipoprotein and low density lipoprotein, you can see that the number of the cholesterol molecules is higher, as well as the number of the protein molecules are also higher. So these are the different classes of the compound lipids. Now we coming to the third category of the structure-based classification of the lipids, which are the derived lipids. They are the hydrolysis products of simple and compound lipids, and hence they are called the derived lipids. These include fatty acids, glycerol, steroids, other alcohols, fatty aldehydes, and ketone bodies, hydrocarbons, lipid-soluble vitamins, etc., like the vitamin A, E, D, and K. So They don't have like a specific group, they are miscellaneous regarding their structure and also their function. So one of the derived lipids that are very common, they contain the cyclic steroid nucleus in their structure, best known steroid among them, and they have association mostly with the atherosclerosis. What is atherosclerosis? It is the building up of plaques of the cholesterol inside the arteries, and hence the blockage of the circulatory pathway. So mostly they are precursors of a large number of equally important steroids such as adrenocortical hormones, which regulates the concentration of electrolytes in the blood. Apart from these, we have the sex hormones, vitamin D, and their function is mostly with the they are present in the nervous tissues, and they have insulating properties, provide as a cover against different environmental stresses, and they are the precursors of many biochemical substances and components of the cell membrane. Now coming to the second form of the classification, which is the function-based classification. We have three kinds of lipids based on their function. Number one are the storage lipids, and these mostly includes the triacylglycerols, which are also called as the neutral fats, because they don't have any acidity or basicity properties. So that's why they are mostly safe to be stored in different parts of the body, and mostly they are stored in the adipocytes in case of animal cells, or they can be present in the cotyledon and the endosperm of the seeds. The second form of the classification based on the function are the structural lipids, and most of them are phospholipids, which are associated with the building of different membranes. They can be cell membrane or different organelles, membranes of different organelles. And the third form are those lipids which serve as signals, cofactors, and as pigments. So they have, like in case of pigments, if we define further, why they are serving as pigments, because of the presence of the conjugated double bonds in their structure. They absorb light and produce different colors, like different colors of the spectrum. Like you can see it in the form of lycopene, which is a pigment present abundantly in the tomato. Zeaxanthin, which is a bit orangish color. Lutein, which is a green pigment, and it's present in the leafy vegetables. Apart from that, carotene, alpha carotene, beta carotene, these all are different types of carotenoids that serve as a pigments, and they have lipids in their structure. Apart from it, we can see the different colors in the feathers of the birds. They are also because of these pigments, these lipids, which serve as the pigments. Apart from it, different cofactors, they are also the structurally they are lipids. So now coming to the function of the lipids, what are their biological roles? We have different variety of functions that are performed by these lipids in different organisms and different plants and different animals. So some of them are the number first is the protection. For example, as we discussed in cases of waxes, that this is the lipid which is protecting the plant leaves from drying up not to evaporate excessive amount of the water. The second is buoyancy. Buoyancy, which is mostly visible in case of heavy whales and sharks, which are floating on the surfaces of the water in the sea. Why? Because the lipids in their body provide them this buoyancy to float. Another important role of the lipid is that they act as a hormones, and hormones regulates many biochemical functions of the body in case of plants and also in case of animals. Other than that, they act as a hydrophobic barrier that permits the partitioning of the aqueous content of the cell and subcellular structure. Like if there are no specific membranes attached to the organelles, there will be no integrity of that organelle in the cell, in the cytoplasm. So, due to the presence of lipids in their membranes, each organelle can be separated, it can be isolated, and it has a different kind of environment which is different from that of the cytoplasm, which can be same or can be different. Also, apart from that, they act as the activators of enzymes. For example, glucose 6-phosphatase, steryl CoA desaturase, omega monoxygenase, and beta hydroxybutyric dehydrogenase, which is a mitochondrial enzyme, require phosphatidylcholine micelles for the activation. Some of the other functions of the lipids, that they serve as a major sources of energy in animals and high lipid containing seeds. You can see that the fat is metabolized into glycerol and fatty acids, and these fatty acids then enter the mitochondria for the release of ATP. So that is basically the generation of energy, and along with that it produces the water and the carbon dioxide. So basically they are serving as a fuel for the cell. They are the building blocks of different kind of membranes and hence provide integrity to the cell and also to different organelles. They act as a thermal insulators, that is, they protect from the hazardous effects of the environments, different stresses of the environments, both to the plants and to the animals. And there are certain other special tasks like visual pigments. They provide support, they provide a role in the signaling, and they are also cofactors. Some other roles are as digestive enzymes. As we know that in liver, the cholesterol is the precursor of bile acid and some other different carboxylic acids, and the function of the bile acid is that it acts as a digestive surfactant and it promotes the absorption of the lipids. So if you have been familiar with this, that lipase, this is the enzyme which break down the fats, and bile acid represents the primary pathway for cholesterol catabolism and accounts for almost 50% of the daily turnover of the cholesterol. So these also help in the digestion of the food. Another function is its function in the immune response. The activated platelets aggregation is partly regulated by the prostaglandins, which are also the lipids in nature, and they also have some role in the apoptosis, which is specifically phosphatidylserine, one of the compound lipid, plays an important role in the apoptosis, which is the programmed cell death. As the medicines, liposomes, we discussed in the initial slides that they form different structure in the water like micelles, vesicles, and these micelles further combine to form the liposomes. So these liposomes, when combined with different tissue specific antibodies, they function as a carriers of drugs via circulatory system to specific organs. For example, in case of cancer treatment, you can see here, this is a graphical representation, that they can carry hydrophobic drugs, crystalline drugs, hydrophobic drugs, and surface conjugated drugs in different form. So these are also used as a medicines, as an antibacterial. Lauric acid is a medium chain fatty acid, and it has antiviral, antibacterial, and antiprotozoal activity. It destroys mostly the lipid coated viruses such as HIVs, herpes, and influenza. As pesticides, numerous plant oils, which are basically lipids in nature, that are used for the making of the insecticides. For example, catnip oil is used as a mosquito repellent. Citrulline oil is used in candles, wipe sprays, again as a repellent of the mosquitoes. And citrus oil, pine oil, and mint oil are also used to produce different insecticides. Another important use of the lipid is in the form of fuels. Biodiesel, which is getting very famous these days as a green alternative of the fossil fuel. The fossil fuel has many hazardous effects on the environment. So a better alternative for them, because they are also, apart from being hazardous to the environment, they are also about to deplete, they are also about to exhaust. So finding a better alternative is in the form of biofuels, and these biofuels or biodiesels, they are very clean burning fuel which are produced from the plants, lipids such as from soya bean. So they are the best alternative to the fossil fuel, and they are derived from the plants, and they are lipids in nature. So up to this we discussed the different classifications and different kind of properties, and also their different roles. So I hope from this lecture you have gained a little bit of information about them. So my last task for my students who are watching this lecture will be to go to this website, to this link, Quizlet, and there are different questions which are based on this video lecture. You can go there, you should go there, and you should try to solve them. They are in the form of different flashcards. So this is one of the activity, and another activity is to watch this movie, Lorenzo's Oil. It's a very informative movie about a different kind of disease, which is basically called the adrenoleukodystrophy, ALD, and it is caused by different kind of lipid disorders. So this is a true story, based on a true story of two parents who are searching for the cure of their son Lorenzo, and he has this disease. So you can gain a lot of information about fats while getting some entertainment as well. And these are some of the references. If you want to further dig into the information of all the points included in this lecture, you should go to these references and you can learn more. So that's all. Bye.